So the official start of today's webinar at a new time. So welcome everyone. A reminder to you that this is being recorded. So if you don't want to be visible, please just go ahead and control your own video there and turn that off. Today's topic is relationship quality. And we are joined by a DCP team member, Manon Themelin. Manon was a student with DCP. She completed her master's degree using DCP data. She's also assisted with us at our Florida office and at both our Bimini and Roatan field sites. We continue to collaborate with Manon, and we are so happy to do so on today's topic of relationship quality. So just before I turn the talk over to you, Manon, I will remind everyone that you'll find yourselves muted. So please go ahead and use the chat function for your questions. You could submit those questions to everyone, and then people can see them as the talk goes on, or you can submit them directly to Dolphin Communication Project. We're going to save questions until the end today, so do stick around, and if you're listening to a recording, keep listening so that we can get to some questions at the end. So with that, I will pass it over to you, Manon.
Thank you. So just going to open this and should I? Okay. And we are ready. Okay, thank you. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today. I'm going to present to you what was part of my work during my master degree. It's mostly a methodological study on relationship quality in dolphins. And so we wanted to see if we could apply methods that were used with chimpanzee and ribbons to dolphins. And so to start, the first question is, what is a relationship? Just gonna move this back down because I cannot see anything. Okay. Well, individuals in their environment are prone to cross the way of other individuals and so interact with each other. So if we take two individuals, A and B, and A is starting to interact with B, B is responding to A, depending on the nature, the frequency, and the consistency of this interaction. So for example, if it's a good, positive interaction almost every day on a regular basis, those two will develop a relationship. And the more they are going to interact, the stronger this relationship will get. Now, if we take a group living species, well, individuals will have very high probability to interact with other individuals. And so if A and B are in a group, B can also interact with E and build a relationship, but E can also interact with C and again develop a relationship. And so at some point, all the individuals in the group will be connected to each other via those relationships. And if you look more closely here, you will have A and B sharing a strong relationship, and A and F here sharing weaker relationship. And so all the individuals will share different kind of relationship. So basically, interaction are the basis. Depending on the nature, the frequency, and the consistency of this interaction, you will have relationship. And taking all the relationship together, you will get to the social structure of the group. Speaking about social structure, dolphins live in fission-fusion society, which means that group size and composition vary throughout the day, depending on numerous factors, the time of the day, the activities the animals are involved in, and also environmental factors. So for example, if it's the morning, if it's the afternoon, if they are feeding, resting near the coast or offshore. So all of this will give the dolphins many possibilities to interact with each other and so to develop relationship. So how do we study those relationships? Well, we just say that interaction are the basis. So we just have to look at interaction, but it's not that easy as dolphins spend their life underwater. But as they do come up to the surface to breathe, we can just observe them at that time. And if we do so, you can see that we have two dolphins here that are coming to the surface at the same time. You have dolphins that are very close here. You have many dolphins coming very close to each other. And those individuals choose to be next to those individuals and not the others that are on the opposite side of the group, for example. So synchronous behavior and proximity can give you an idea of the association pattern of individual in a group, and also how much time those individuals spend together. But this gives you just a glimpse of their relationship, because as you know, people can spend much time together, but they won't particularly build a strong relationship. For example, if we go to school every day, you will spend much time with your classmates, but it doesn't mean you're going to interact with everyone in the same way. For example, you will probably interact more with the person next to you than with the person at the back of the room. And so the quality of your relationship will be completely different. And so here we are, relationship quality. So how do we define this? Well, we can divide it in three main components: the value, the security, and the compatibility of the relationship. The value will be related to what individual can gain from the relationship. So it will be direct benefits from the relationship. The security will be, for example, the consistency of the partner's response to each other over time. And the compatibility will be related to tolerance and affiliation based on the personalities and the social exchange history of those two individuals. And so if you look at this all together, well, looking at relationship quality is actually looking at how individuals interact with each other based on their social behavior. And so how do we actually study those relationship quality? Well, we have to look at interaction for sure. So if your species are cryptic, like dolphins that live underwater, you have to find a way to observe them. So for dolphins, you have to go in the water with them. And once you can observe them, well, you have to find behaviors that are variable to those species and behaviors that could correspond to one of the three components, value, security, and compatibility. And once you find those behavior, you will create behavioral variables, which are basically formulas that will help you get a measurement of those behavior. And you will measure each behavioral variables for each dyad in both directions. So if I take an example of food sharing, for example, you will have to measure the variables from A to B. So how many times A share food with B and how many times B shared food with A, which can be different because the relationship are rarely symmetrical. And so once you have the measurement for all of your variables, you can test them for the three relationship quality components, which means if you have many variables, let's say 10 variables, and you manage to divide them in three categories. And in each categories, you have variables that correspond to the definition of value, security, and compatibility, then it means that you succeed and you can go even further and study different effects of different factors on each of those components. For example, the sex combination in the dyad, the age combination in the dyad. So male dyad, female dyad, for example. And this will give you more details. As an example, this has been done with Chimpanzee and Ribbon. So I'm not going to detail everything here. It's just to make it easier to understand to what we want to do with dolphins. And so they had many behavioral variables and they tested them for the three quality components. And they managed to see that those here were grouped together, and because they were related to benefits, direct benefits from the relationship, they related those variables to the value component. Then they had this group here, which comports symmetry and consistency over time. And so it was related to security component. And then they had those group here, and it's more an affiliative and tolerance point of view. And so they related it to compatibility. And basically, this is what we wanted to try to do with dolphins. In order to do so, we had to find populations that we could study underwater, and which is great with DCP. If you are familiar with our webinar, you already know those two populations. The first is the Raritan dolphin at RIMS, so bottlenose dolphin in managed care, and the second are the Atlantic spotted dolphin we see in Bimini. And so the method was quite simple. We just went in the water with them and record one individual at a time, because focusing on one individual, you can see all these interaction with other individuals. And going individuals by individuals, you do as a group, and then you gather the most important amount of data. And to help us record those data, we used what is called behavioral logging software. This one is called Boris, and it was quite handy to us because it goes faster than just using Excel, and it also allows for more consistency because we just have to press the key on the keyboard corresponding to the behavior we choose, so C for contact here, for example, and then we just had to enter the information we wanted for each behavior. So I'm going to quickly detail those three behaviors we choose: contact, object play, and pair swim position. Starting with contact, we recorded the ID of the individuals. So here you have champ above and Stan just under. The type of the contacts they were exchanging. So here you have a rub. The response of the receiver, here you see champ rubbing Stan and then Stan rubbing against champ's pectoral fin. And so this is a positive interaction. Then we look at pair swim position. Here we have an infant position with Stan above Polly. So we had different type of position. We just recorded the ID of the individual, what type of position, and the position of each individuals in the pair swimming. And then we looked at object play. So every time we had individuals playing with an object, here we had Tilly playing with a seagrass, and then on the left, Kelly coming and taking the seagrass. So we just noted the name of the individuals and the type of objects they were playing with. And with those three behaviors, we were able to create 8 behavioral variables. I'm not going to detail the formula we used. I'm just going to give a quick definition for each behavioral variables. So for contact, we created 5 behavioral variables. So positive and negative interaction were based on the receiver of the contact, the receiver reaction. So we saw it earlier with Stan and Champ. It was a positive interaction. And an example of a negative interaction could be, for example, an individual running away of the contact, after a contact. Then we also created a rub variables because rub are very important in the social life of dolphins. And we also had symmetrical variable here to measure the symmetry, of course, to see if A was initiating as much behavior with B's and B with A. And then with pair swimming, we just look at the number of pair swim involving the 2 partners. With object play, pretty the same. We look at the number of times we saw 2 individuals playing with the same object. And then we added what we called a together behavior. It was much more of a tool to measure proximity between 2 dolphins. So each time we had 2 dolphins next to each other for a few seconds at least, we recorded a together behavior. And so all those measures were gathered in one table, and here is an example. As you can see, for each dyad, we have 2 lines because we needed the direction from A to B and then B to A. So champ to Mac and Mac to champ. And if you look at the positive interaction column, you can see that Mac initiated more positive interaction with champ than champ did with Mac, so asymmetrical. And then this table was used during statistic analysis. So we use what is called a principal component analysis. So basically it's helping us reduce the number of variables to have only few behavioral components. And so it means if we have only 3 categories with our 8 behavioral variables, and that the variables inside those categories correspond to the definition we give earlier of value, security, and compatibility, then we can apply this the method used in Chimpanzee and Ribbon to dolphins. And these are the results we got. So the first thing you have to see here is we have 3 components: value, security, and compatibility. And each component has the same variables for the 2 populations. So mutual play and proximity here and here for Bimini and RIMS. And for the security, the different for security, sorry, the different symmetrical variables, and then for compatibility, variables that were related to tolerance and affiliation, so positive, negative interaction, and ROBs. And the only difference you can see here is this one, with pair swimming ended up in security at RIMS and in value in Bimini. But we will see that a bit later. The first thing you have to remember here is we have our 3 components, and so we can go further into relationship quality, meaning we can test statistically to see if we have an effect of, for example, the age combination of the dyad, the sex combination of the dyad. So age and sex were tested at both sites, Bimini and RIMS, and kinship and relationship tenure were only tested for RIMS because we didn't have this information for Bimini. And this means that we were asking questions like, for example, does female-female dyad have more compatible relationship? Or those, for example, juvenile-juvenile dyad are more secure? Or those siblings share more variable relationships than non-siblings? And so the only effect we find was a sex effect on value at RIMS, and we illustrate it like this. As you can see, male-male dyad share higher score of value than any other dyad, which means, if you remember what we had in the value component, proximity and mutual play, this means that the male-male dyad had higher score of mutual play and proximity than any other dyad. And if you want to compare our 2 populations, well, we saw that we have pair swim position that end up in security at RIMS and value at Bimini, but also that we only have sex effect on value at RIMS and nothing on Bimini. So how can we explain those differences? Let's start with the sex effect on value at RIMS. If we look more closely at the RIMS population, we can see that it's a resident population because they are in managed care, they live year-round at the same place. There is no incoming or leaving individuals. And this means that the male will have an access to a limited number of reproductive female. And this means that male will have to compete for female access. And this particular setting are the same than in wild population, where we can see male alliances, like for example, in Shark Bay, Australia. Over there, the community are quite enclosed and the dolphins live in the same area year round. And so male develop alliances with one or two other male with whom they will share very high value score and spend much of their time with. And on the contrary, if we look at our Bimini population, we currently do not see this kind of pattern in male for now. And so that could explain why we have only an effect at RIMS and not at Bimini. But also one thing that we have to keep in mind is we had a very small sample set, and only finding one effect on value at RIMS doesn't mean that we do not have anything else. It just means that maybe other effects are hidden because we had a too small sample size. And so about pair swimming, if we remember what we have in our variables, we actually look at all the different type of pair swim together. So infant position, echelon position, parallel position, and few others. And if we look more closely at what we had in our two population, we see that we do not observe the same type of pair swimming in the same amount of at both sides. It doesn't particularly sorry, it doesn't mean that the two populations are different. It's just maybe we didn't have the opportunity to look at the two type of pair swimming at both sides. And so as we also had a very small sample size, this leads us to two main questions. Maybe the different pair swim positions have different meanings for the dolphins, because where we had more infant position, it ended up in security, and where we had more parallel, the variables ended up in value. But also another question could be, maybe the different type of position are not used in the same way, but by the different categories. For example, depending on the age, the sex, or the kinship of the individuals involved in those pair swimming. And so to answer to those questions, we are actually doing a study by recording every type of pair swimming we can see and trying to see if we could explain the different pattern, and if we can see anything according to age or sex of the individuals. And this will help us to improve our variables to go in more details in RQ. So we see that with only 4 behavior, we were able to define relationship quality in dolphins and use the same method that was used with Chimpanzee and Ribbon, and find the 3 components: value, security, and compatibility. And this means that we can describe in more details relationship quality for each dyad, and doing so depending on the nature, the frequency, the consistency, and the symmetry of each interaction. But also we can go into much more detail by looking at age and sex effect on each of the components of relationship quality. And for now, we only find sex effect on value at RIMS, but as I said it earlier, it doesn't mean that we don't have anything else. And so we are working hard to go through many hours of videos. It takes a lot of time to be able to go further and do it, reduce this method with a larger sample size to see if we manage to demonstrate other effects on other relationship components. And so I just wanted to finish with this slide because I just showed it to you earlier. Chimpanzee and Ribbon use the exact same method with behavioral variables and using PCA, and we just did it with dolphins. And using the same method with different species means that we can directly compare the results that we have. And we will surely do so when we will have the larger sample set. And also an improved pair swimming variable. All right, well, thank you everyone. If you have any question.
Thank you so much, Manon. If you can stop your screen share for a minute, I will wrap up for everyone, and then we can get to questions. A reminder to anyone who maybe arrived late or is listening to this on a recording, you can find all of our webinars. They are hosted on, the recordings are available on our website, dolphincommunicationproject.org. Just visit that education tab and you'll find the webinars there. It's also on YouTube, our newer YouTube channel. Dolphin Communication Project. We made it easier to find us. All of our recordings are there. Then we have two types of webinars. So today was a deep dive, a bit more technical, so geared towards an older audience, but of course we welcome everyone. These are generally live on the second and fourth Thursdays of the month. They're generally at 1 p.m., but as we need to adjust for time zones and things like that, sometimes we change it. And then Dolphin lessons are geared towards a younger audience, but again, we welcome everyone. Tends to be a shorter talk, more accessible to ages 6 to 13, and those are generally live on the first and third Tuesday of the month. Next Tuesday, we will have a guest, our colleague Erin Frick will be talking about river dolphins. So you can tune into that next Tuesday at 1 o'clock or grab the recording. And then of course we have our podcast, The Dolphin Pod. We don't have any new episodes coming up, but you can access old episodes on our website or wherever you get your podcasts. And then, of course, we are a nonprofit and we are happy to provide these webinars and other programs free of charge, but we need our supporters to continue to allow us to do that. So you can support us through our Adopt a Dolphin program, becoming a member, and even joining us in the field. You can join us at both field sites that Manon talked about today, including Bimini, and we're actively recruiting for our July 2021 program. So if you're feeling safe to travel, able to travel this summer, definitely check that out. And of course, stay in touch. So you can see our web address there, our email address, and all of social media stuff. So with that, we will get to questions. Kathleen, do you want to start or shall I? I'm putting Dr. Kathleen on the spot here.
Well, I would be happy to start. I had one bit of, I think maybe Manon, you could maybe provide a little bit of clarification when you're talking about pair swim position, and you were focusing on the infant position. Were you talking about infant position between moms and calves as we normally recognize that position where the calf is just below the mom? Or were you talking about infant position by other dolphins?
So for the variables, the behavioral variables, I was talking about all individual of all ages. And for the study we are working on to try to ID any patterns between pair swimming, we are actually shutting out mother-calf pair because we want to look at other pair swim position between adults or adults and subadults and all others.
Cool. I have another, but let you go first, Kel.
Okay. We had a kind of general question, and hopefully I'll get it right, not about the differences that DCP might be discovering or not between the two sites, but in terms of the work to sample the video and find the contacts and the positions. How is it different to, as a researcher, be studying the dolphins at RIMS versus the wild dolphins in Bimini?
Okay, I think I get the question. Well, you will spend much more time looking at the videos from Bimini because you have actually to find the dolphins. So in the many hours of video that we have from Bimini, sorry, we have a lot of water with no dolphins. And so we have to wait until we see dolphins interacting. While at RIMS, we just have to go there and they're just here, almost waiting for us. So it's much more easier to gather information and data for RIMS than from Bimini. It's way faster at RIMS.
Although I would have to add that there's a lot of dolphins in view from RIMS as well.
Yeah.
So we spend a lot of time going through the video.
Yep.
Though each frame or few seconds of RIMS data can take you longer to log the interactions, but you spend more time just kind of fast forwarding in Bimini to get to something to record.
Yeah.
Going back to the swim positions, we have a question about whether or not you can have or you've observed 3 dolphins swimming in that position at the same time, or in general, do you ever have more than 2 dolphins involved in the behavior at the same time?
Yes, we have. We actually have sandwiches of dolphins almost, because you have, I don't know how to call this, because you have 2 mother calf positions at the same time. So basically you have one individual here, another here, but you have another here also. And it's not the only thing that we see, because sometimes you can have 2 infant positions at the same time, and both are perfectly parallel and synchronized. So it seems that we have different pattern of pair swimming. And so for the study we're working on, we are going to focus on simple pair swimming before going to more complex things, because it's complicated to understand what's happening when you have more than 2 individuals, because you actually don't really know if they are here because of the individual just above them or with the individuals next to them. It's a much more complicated interpretation.
Thank you. And then a question going back to that DCP didn't invent this system, but took it from chimpanzees and ravens and applied it to dolphins. What were the challenges in taking something that researchers studying a different species and a different environment, everything about them is different, right? And trying to make sure that it was scientifically sound when applying it to dolphins?
Well, for this one, we had to find behavioral variables that could be comparable to those used in chimpanzee and ravens, but that were also important for dolphins, because you need to focus on the species you are working with before comparing it to the other. And so an example that I can take is for the chimpanzee, they had a food sharing variable. And so it was involving, of course, 2 individuals, and to try to match, I would say, these variables, we use mutual object play, because it was also involving 2 individuals. And even though studies are quite struggling to demonstrate the benefits of play on each individuals, we can all agree to say there is benefits, even if we don't actually know them. And so that's why we did this substitution, I would say, for food sharing and mutual play in dolphins. So yeah, it's quite complicated to find something that will match with the species and other for comparison. But sometimes you have to be creative.
If I can just add, to me, what's exciting about this and how this technique and tool has been applied originally with chimps and ravens, who are terrestrial and aerial, has now been applied with an aquatic social species. So it will allow us to look eventually at a comparison of the social interactions and the relationships between individuals who could be terrestrial, aquatic, or aerial. And it'll allow us evolutionarily to look to see, okay, where are the similarities? Where are the differences? And to me, that's very exciting.
And which researcher did it first? The chimp researchers or the raven researchers? Or did they do it together?
Actually, I will say
I think the chimps.
It's the chimps, but I'm wondering if someone didn't do it earlier on macaques. But yeah, the team that worked on chimpanzee was Fraser and Bergnar, thank you. And they both worked together on Raven after. So for those two, it's basically the same team.
The same. And then have you heard what they think of DCP's translation, if you will, of it to dolphins?
Well, actually, we know that one of them, don't remember which one either, Thomas maybe?
Thomas.
Yeah, was one of the reviewers for the paper and was happy of our work. So for now, it's a good, positive thought.
I think when a reviewer allows their name to be identified, they were probably pleased with how it was applied.
Excellent. I think this will be the last call for questions. If anyone has any last minute something they're desperate to know, and if not, again, you know how to find us by email, social media. Kathleen, did you have anything else to add?
Oh, I can add lots of questions, but this is a research topic I'm enjoying. So I think Manon did a fantastic job on the project for her thesis. It's going to inform. It's already being used with the work that we're doing at DCP and other areas. So exciting.
Ongoing. Well, thank you so much, Manon, for leading that talk. As always, you did an excellent job. And we thank everyone who joined us today live and anyone who's watching the recording. Thank you very much. And we hope to see you at another webinar again soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.